For over 2 decades, Matt Lauer wasn't just a TV host. He was a fixture in American homes. Every morning, millions tuned in to see him deliver the news with confidence and charm, making him one of the most trusted faces in television. But behind the smiles, the multi-million-dollar paychecks, and the image of stability, something much darker was quietly growing. His downfall would become one of the most shocking implosions in modern media history, exposing secrets that had been buried for years. How did America's morning king end up disappearing from the spotlight entirely? Matt Lauer's journey to superstardom began long before his Today Show fame. After bouncing between local news gigs in the 1980s and early 90s, he landed a spot at NBC in 1994. His natural charisma and conversational style immediately stood out, connecting with viewers in a way few journalists could. By 1997, NBC paired him with Katie Couric, a decision that turned the Today Show into the undisputed leader of morning television. Lauer became a household name, securing interviews with presidents, A-list celebrities, and world leaders. With ratings soaring, his salary skyrocketed to an eye-popping $25 million a year, placing him among the highest-paid television personalities in the world. Luxury estates in the Hamptons, lavish parties, and an aura of untouchable success cemented his reputation as TV royalty. For audiences, he was the reliable anchor who greeted them every morning. For NBC, he was the cash machine driving hundreds of millions in advertising revenue. But beneath that polished exterior and endless charm, troubling whispers began surfacing, whispers that NBC seemed in no rush to confront. What viewers saw as confidence, colleagues sometimes described as something far less flattering. Behind the glossy smiles and polished interviews, rumors about Matt Lauer's behavior began to ripple through NBC offices. Colleagues whispered about inappropriate jokes, comments that crossed professional boundaries, and interactions that left women feeling uncomfortable. In an environment where ratings meant everything, these concerns rarely traveled beyond break room conversations. Lauer wasn't just another employee, he was the star who made the network untold millions. Speaking out against him wasn't just risky, it was career suicide. The power imbalance was staggering. Staffers described feeling like NBC executives valued profits far more than employee well-being, turning a blind eye to anything that might jeopardize their golden goose. Over time, the culture of silence deepened. As one former producer put it, everyone knew something was off, but no one dared challenge him. For years, the whispers stayed hidden, drowned out by the daily grind of a show America couldn't stop watching. But like cracks in a dam, the pressure was building, and it was only a matter of time before the wall gave way. And strangely enough, some of the red flags weren't hidden at all. They happened in front of millions of viewers. The warning signs of Matt Lauer's troubling behavior weren't just whispered about, they were broadcast live. In 2012, his interview with Anne Hathaway went viral for all the wrong reasons. Instead of focusing on her film, he chose to press her about invasive paparazzi photos, joking about a so-called wardrobe malfunction. Hathaway, with remarkable composure, pushed back, calling out the problem of exploiting women's privacy. The exchange exposed a side of Lauer that many brushed off as awkward humor, but in hindsight looked like something much worse. A similar incident occurred during his interview with Sandra Bullock, when Lauer repeatedly joked about her nude scenes, refusing to drop the subject even as she grew visibly uncomfortable. Then came Britney Spears, a vulnerable young mother fighting tabloid scrutiny. Lauer's relentless questioning about her parenting drove her to tears on national television. At the time, critics called it harsh journalism. Years later, it was seen as bullying cloaked in professionalism. These were not isolated moments. They were glimpses of a deeper pattern. But while viewers often forgot, those working closest to him couldn't, because behind the cameras, the environment around Lauer was far more disturbing than most realize. NBC's bustling studio hid a toxic workplace culture that many staffers later described as suffocating. Lauer wasn't just a co-host, he was effectively untouchable. Employees recalled a culture where inappropriate jokes and comments were normalized, and anyone raising concerns risked being sidelined. Women described feeling trapped, forced to endure behavior they knew was wrong, yet terrified of losing their jobs if they spoke up. One high-profile example was Ann Curry. As Lauer's co-host, she should have been his equal. Instead, she endured what she later described as professional torture. When female employees confided in her about Lauer's behavior, Curry tried to take their concerns to HR. The response? NBC removed her while Lauer remained in his $25 million chair. The message couldn't have been clearer. Protect the star, silence the challengers. Sources would later allege that NBC executives were well aware of complaints, but instead of addressing them, they relied on non-disclosure agreements and quiet settlements to protect their bottom line. This wasn't just one man abusing power, it was an institution enabling it. But no empire built on silence lasts forever, and one trip to the Olympics would finally shatter it all. In 2014, during the Winter Olympics in Sochi, Russia, an incident occurred that would later bring Matt Lauer's empire crashing down. According to a detailed complaint filed in 2017, a female NBC employee alleged that an encounter with Lauer became non-consensual after she had been drinking heavily. The account was disturbing and specific enough that executives could no longer dismiss it as rumor or settle it quietly. Once her complaint reached the top, it opened the floodgates. Multiple women came forward with their own stories, some dating back over a decade. One producer claimed that Lauer summoned her to his office under the guise of work, then locked the door and assaulted her. Others described unwanted advances, inappropriate gifts, and retaliation when they refused him. For years, these stories had been silenced. But now, with the cultural shift of the #MeToo movement in full swing, NBC executives had no choice. The whispers had become shouts. The empire of protection built around Lauer collapsed in real time. And on one November morning in 2017, the fall of Matt Lauer played out live in front of millions. On November 29, 2017, Today Show viewers tuned in expecting their usual morning routine, only to watch Savannah Guthrie and Hoda Kotb deliver devastating news. Their colleague and friend Matt Lauer had been fired overnight for inappropriate sexual behavior. Their voices shook as they read the announcement, the disbelief mirrored by millions watching at home. The man who had been a daily presence for decades was suddenly gone, his name synonymous with betrayal. The impact was immediate. NBC severed all ties, canceling his $25 million salary without severance. No other network would touch him. The media world that had once revolved around him turned its back overnight. For viewers, it was a harsh reminder. The smiling face they'd welcomed into their homes had been hiding a disturbing reality. For NBC, it was a reckoning, a symbol of how quickly a network's crown jewel could become its greatest liability. The story wasn't just about one man falling. It was about a culture that enabled him until it was too late. But while his career ended in a single day, his personal unraveling was just beginning. After his firing, Matt Lauer retreated from public life almost completely. Once a fixture at glamorous parties and Hamptons events, he vanished into isolation at his estate. Friends stopped calling, invitations disappeared, and he was quickly abandoned by the circles that had once depended on his fame. His marriage to Annette Rowe crumbled, leading to divorce after years of strain. Reports suggested she had long known about his affairs but stayed for the sake of their children. Now, the exposure of his behavior made the marriage untenable. Financially, Lauer remained wealthy, but his fortune no longer bought influence. Attempts to defend himself, like a 2019 op-ed, only deepened public anger, seen as arrogant and tone-deaf rather than remorseful. A new relationship with a marketing executive brought occasional sightings, but they only highlighted how far he had fallen. For someone who thrived on attention, the silence was devastating. In an age where disgraced celebrities often attempt comebacks through podcasts or books, Lauer remained invisible, leaving many to wonder if he recognized just how permanent his fall had become. But his story didn't just mark the end of one man's career, it redefined an entire industry. Matt Lauer's downfall wasn't just about one celebrity scandal. It symbolized the cultural shift of the #MeToo movement. For decades, networks protected their stars at all costs, dismissing complaints and silencing victims. Lauer's firing shattered that illusion. NBC's decision to cut ties so swiftly sent a clear message. Even the most profitable personalities weren't immune anymore. Across the industry, networks began reevaluating workplace policies, implementing stronger safeguards, and rethinking how much power a single individual should hold. For victims, Lauer's fall represented hope, proof that speaking up could finally lead to accountability. But it also raised hard questions. How many years did NBC know? How many complaints were buried? And how many careers were sacrificed to protect one man's image? Beyond NBC, his case became a cautionary tale about building entire brands around a single personality. When he fell, he didn't just take himself down, he shook the foundation of morning television itself. Ultimately, Matt Lauer's story is less about his personal disgrace and more about a cultural awakening, a reminder that no empire built on silence can last forever.